Hi, everyone. I think we're going to get started here. I'm very, very excited for our afternoon keynote. It is a duo. So Yvonne Dotson, MPHRN, is a longevity dynamo, African-American woman's wellness warrior, keynote speaker, positivity, stress management, mindfulness, diversity, and wellness expert, nurse leader, author, and educator. Passionate about empowering patients with educational tools to improve health, she has spearheaded multidisciplinary provider clinical practice solutions at health equity frontline intersections where bias, debilitating chronic stress, disease, and disability have negatively impacted overall well-being, homeostatic stability, cellular renewal, immune system resilience, healthy aging, and longevity. Yvonne's family morbidity and mortality history of obesity, heart attack, diabetes, stroke, cancer, and depression propelled her awareness of being endangered in her early 20s when she embarked on a personal quest to make healthy nutrition choices, become a fitness trainer, and successfully beat the odds of chronic illness and premature aging. And she is going to be speaking with, see if we have this as well. With Dr. Stacie Walton, who is CEO and founder of the Diversity Doctor, a consulting firm that provides speaking training and strategy for individuals and organizations seeking diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging expertise. She is a board-certified pediatrician and cultural anthropologist, and has been a professor, clinical educator, and consultant for healthcare, education, and business for over 25 years, as well as providing keynote presentations through the Social Justice Speakers Bureau, Tour de Force speakers. Stacie teaches racial healing and implicit bias courses with the Renaissance Society at Sacramento State University. After graduating with honors from Stanford University, majoring in cultural anthropology, she attended Columbia University Vagelos College of Physicians and Surgeons. She trained at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and received her Master of Public Health from the University of California at Berkeley. Please give a warm welcome to our this afternoon's keynote.
Let's see, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Kristen, for that wonderful introduction. And we're really honored to be here today at the Buck Institute to present.
Can't hear you as well now.
Okay, let's see. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so I was just saying thank you so much for being here. We're happy to be here to present on this very important subject. I must say for myself, I'm really lucky to be here and lucky that I didn't have to travel to get here because I actually live in Marin County. So I feel I have a little bit of edge on energy right now. But in addition to the introduction, and thank you so much, my primary work, and my goodness, I didn't realize this moved. My primary work over the past 20 years or so has really been dedicated to patient, nursing, and medical practice professionals regarding stress management and patient advocacy by creating and providing cultural competency training tools and educational strategies to educate patients on being seen and heard, help reduce stress, combat bias, racism, and discrimination during medical provider exams, as well as in multiple healthcare settings. As you can see, our title, Endangered, Black Women Healthcare Disparities and Longevity, is a critical issue facing the United States today, as well as around the world, for various reasons. We're really thrilled in terms of being a part of this interprofessional collaboration so we can all share our insights, our research, and our experience, make some recommendations, and talk about research investment challenges. Our problem statement is pretty straightforward. Despite the advances in medical research and treatment over the past 30, indeed 40 or more years, Black women today still face daunting hurdles of survival, resilience, and longevity. Our objectives are just to try and highlight why Black women today are an endangered species in the United States, explore the role of implicit bias and racial discrimination in longevity disparity outcomes, discuss how racism is both emotionally painful and also results in pain management disparities. We want to help empower conversations about navigating race and multidisciplinary scientific inquiry, and provide some recommendations regarding education, research, funding opportunities, and prevention. In terms of Black women's longevity at risk, we really have a lot of alarming data from research and studies. And in fact, some of that alarming data is right here. It is really quite something to wrap your hands around the fact that 49% of women, Black women over 20, have some type of heart disease today. More alarming data, Black women are living an average of 10 years less than white women. We're 3 times more likely to die in pregnancy and postpartum, 3 to 4 more times as likely to die of COVID-19 than white women or men. We're 5 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related cardiomyopathy and blood pressure disorders. We're also experiencing faster telomere shortening, accelerated cellular aging compared to other groups. More alarming data, because it doesn't stop there. We're systematically undertreated for pain relative to white Americans. We have a significantly higher rates of hysterectomies than Caucasian women, and we're less counseled about other options other than surgery, such as a hysterectomy, and receive hormone counseling for replacement therapy after menopause and beyond. And in fact, hormone replacement therapy such as estrogen has actually been found to have some protective effects against heart disease, cancer, blood pressure, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, stroke, and depression. And I do feel I am living proof of hormone replacement therapy because I actually have been on estrogen for 36 years due to having a surgical hysterectomy when I was 40. So I know part of my longevity has been in direct relationship to that. And equally as amazing, as of 2019, breast cancer actually beat out lung cancer as the highest cause of death among African American women. So we really have just astronomical comorbid chronic disease risks in multiple categories. So I really wanted to, while I was compiling this research and data, I really wanted to find out what the major causes of death were today for African American women. because they actually go hand in hand with the diseases of aging. And they are heart disease, stroke, and cancer. I actually meant to leave that slide up, but I'll leave this one up because I will be going to this one next. This is a picture of my family, and I'll talk a little bit more in depth about how these diseases impacted their mortality and morbidity. So I really wanted to sleuth out the most critical common denominator revolving around the three major causes of death, being cancer and stroke. And I found out far and above and all the rest, excessive weight and obesity is the through line and front line driver to those major diseases. It seems to appear and definitely indicates that it sets up a deadly infrastructure of homeostatic vulnerability and instability. Obesity weaves a deadly thread through the fabric of many Black women's lives, endangering our quality of life and long-term survival. Indeed, for many Black women, excessive weight and obesity starts in childhood, goes through to the teen and young adult years, continues through menopause, and into the senior years. So the complexities of all of these conditions moving across the lifespan with virtually no break in its intensity is of extreme concern to us. And then the triple threat of heart disease and cancer and stroke, hypertension, often coexist simultaneously. So our comorbidity rate is even further enhanced and more threatening. Another extremely important stressor is that many Black women report negative impacts to their health through racism, stereotyping, and discrimination that they experience in many provider interactions. So this is something we are constantly working on, and a lot of the work I do around this is to directly work with providers during actual exams. And over the past 20 or 30 years or so, I have been in thousands of exams with patients, reflecting back, advocating, and speaking with providers and helping to increase awareness and solutions on how they can try to address some of these types of issues so that we can all evolve and contribute and help reduce some of these disparities. And Stacie will go into more around bias after I complete my part here. Obesity also causes changes in the body that help lead to cancer, including long-lasting inflammation and elevated insulin and sex hormone levels. The risk of cancer increases with the more excess weight gained and the longer a person is actually overweight. Other comorbid medical conditions, including diabetes, asthma, depression, Alzheimer's, are also related to obesity, which Black women disproportionately suffer from. In fact, obesity is now the top modifiable dementia risk factor in the United States, with midlife obesity overtaking physical inactivity at the top. So these conditions, coupled with the progressive complexities of cumulative physical and mental health stressors takes a tremendous toll on Black women. Increases long-term disability and challenges our longevity daily. So I promised you I would talk a little bit about my family and tell you a little bit about my story and why I felt it was so vital for me to be here today. So this is a picture of me when I was around 6. My mother, my brother, my great-grandmother, well, my brother is sitting on her lap, my grandmother, moving over here. This is my great aunt, who was also a nurse, my father, and my grandfather, who was a founder of Kappa Alpha Psi African American Men's Fraternity, who was also a double below the knee amputee due to diabetes. And then that's another picture of me in my 20s, just as a little side. So today I'm going to share my age 6 to now age 76 story and how I beat the odds of their early demise, because all of my relatives in this photo collage, except for me, died of stroke, cancer, depression, diabetes, and heart disease. What is startling to me is they died over 20 to 30, 40 years ago, but not much has changed in the dangers, despite the research and advances that we have all made in medicine. That not much has changed, so we're still at that critical juncture point. My father, well, actually, let me back up. My actual initial foray into healthcare was when my grandmother taught me to give her insulin injections when I was 6. And I was hooked ever since, and I'm still here working in healthcare. My father died of a massive heart attack when he was 53 because of a really dangerous lifestyle habit, a poor diet, a lack of exercise, eating high fatty foods. So that was the first time I really felt endangered in my life. In fact, I didn't even think I would make it to my 40s. And I actually lived in fear that my epigenetic clock was going to explode at any time. But that really did propel me to adopt a different lifestyle. I learned how to cope with stress better. I took up yoga, meditation. I exercised more, made different food choices. And last but not least, in addition to being a nurse and a clinician and other many variable things, I became a fitness trainer so I could help other women try to conquer obesity to lessen the threat to their lives. So as I stand here before you today, I actually know that I beat those odds. And just a few months ago, I realized I'd actually surpassed my projected lifespan date, which is amazing. Because my projected lifespan as an African American woman in the United States today is 71. And now I'm 76, and I am thrilled to be able to actually be here before you, so that I can say it's possible, and I believe with all of our help and research and commitment to working on these areas that we can beat some of these diseases together. Thank you. So moving on a little bit more, as I'm really kind of talking about this, people don't care about what you know unless they know that you care. Racism in provider interactions is very important. We really want to try to eliminate that so that we can help improve outcomes during our assessment, treatment, and interventions. And patient engagement is indeed another very important aspect of that, and this really forms the basis of how our patients are going to respond to us, commit to making maybe behavioral changes in their lifestyle. And I believe my greatest patient care skill is a smile and compassionate listening. Racism is painful, so we really want to work on providing unbiased, patient-centric care, build therapeutic trust, and partner with our patients. Utilize positive provider communication techniques, learn about inclusion, bias, stereotyping, and get involved in racial healing. We want to continue to evolve, listen, be empathetic, mindful, caring, and reflective. So the joys of life and good health are many to behold, and we want all of us to behold them more. We want to increase resilience, improve outcomes, eliminate disparities, increase thrivability, optimize our quality of life, and maximize life expectancy. And with that, I will turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Stacie, whom I met in graduate school. We did our MPHs together almost 30 years ago now. But I'll let her take over, and thank you so much for your attention.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to change the energy in the room. Lift it up just a little bit. And I want to start with, can you hear me okay? Okay. I want to start with, if you're comfortable standing up at your places. This exercise is easier if you're standing. Move a little. Arms, yeah, stretch a little bit. Lunch was great. We had wonderful conversations happening in the lunchroom. It was wonderful. So now I want you to point your index finger to the sky, to the ceiling. Imagine there's a clock up there. Clock up there. Now I want you to rotate your finger around the clock, starting at 12, 3, 6, 9. Keep that rotation going. I'm going to ask you to do something else, but you have to keep that rotation going. Promise? And so slowly bring your elbow down towards your hip. Oh, I forgot to ask a question. What is the rotation? Anybody? What direction is that your finger moving? Clockwise, absolutely. Okay, now just gently bring your elbow down towards your hip. And now I'd like you to look at your finger. What direction is it moving? Absolutely. So what just happened? I told you not to change. What just happened? Perspective changed. And I want you to hold this concept in front of you as I talk for the next 8 minutes. Oh, and you can all sit down. Perspective. It is so important that we keep in mind that reality in front of us is interpreted by our own individual, unique brains. And our brains interpret reality depending on our lived life experience, our values, and our perspective. And so that's why at any given time, each and every one of us could be observing the same objective reality and have a different take on it. That's actually, in fact, probably why the scientific method is so rigorous, right? The way that we form theories and hypotheses, and there's someone in the back of the room still moving their finger. But that is why that we spend so much energy around making sure we get it right. And what is that all about? It's all about bias. And so, as I advance my slide, I'm going to be talking very briefly is how does bias impact this health disparity that Yvonne so eloquently described for us. And I'm going to do it in a couple ways. I'm going to talk a little bit about the distrust of the healthcare system of African American Black women today. And I'm going to talk about it from the point, I'm going to do that. And we did the clock exercise. Agnès Nin said, she's a French author and philosopher, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are, to reinforce that point. As I talk about bias, I want to say something. I'm going to talk about the biggest myth that we're still holding on to in healthcare, in the medical institution, and that is that our bodies are different. I share 99.9% of your DNA. I am part of the human race with each and every one in this room. Something happened in the 15, 16, and 1700s across the world where scientists and medical physicians decided to categorize human beings. And categorizing us by interesting facts like the color of our skin, the shape of our heads, how tall we were, et cetera, is really interesting. The problem was that then the next step was creating human value with that categorization. And we're still living with that. We're still living with the vestiges of attaching human value to our differences. I know we have an international audience and there's something incredibly unique around US racism, so I apologize if this isn't quite relatable. But one of the things that happened here in the United States was something called chattel slavery. If we talk about distrust and unequal treatment here in the United States for Black women, we have to take this uncomfortable journey towards history. We just have to. We have to get to the root causes of some of these beliefs around how our bodies are different. I'm going to skip a lot. Many of you probably know about Tuskegee. I'm just going to give a couple quick facts. It went over 4 decades. It lasted 40 years. 10 years into the study, we already knew about penicillin and it treated syphilis. But the reason why each and every one of you can go and get such a detailed, intricate story about syphilis and its pathophysiology is that we let these men suffer with syphilis for 40 years. So we not only have great research around neurosyphilis, we have great research around neonatal syphilis. These men took that syphilis home to their wives. I'm not going to go over Welf and Weinberg. That's homework. Many of you know about Henrietta Lacks. I mean, if you're doing research and you know anything about HeLa cells, you know that she's a woman who provided cervical cancer cells that continue to be used around the world, and many pharmaceutical scientific markets are still making gobs and gobs of profits over her cells, and her family still lives in poverty in Maryland, despite a best-selling New York book and Oprah Winfrey doing a movie. But I will take 2 seconds to tell the story of Dr. James Marion Sims. Dr. Sims was a well-renowned gynecologist in the 1850s who actually has the famous name, the father of gynecology. And Dr. Sims lived during a time when he had enslaved people on his plantation, and he spent his lifetime doing surgery, gynecological surgery, on enslaved women. Interesting enough, he did this surgery without anesthesia. He documents it beautiful in his autobiography. You may be wondering, how could this happen? How could anyone even consider doing surgery on someone without anesthesia? Well, it was because during that time, the scientists around Dr. Sims reinforced the notions that our bodies are different. Black people have low brain capacity, therefore they're not as intelligent, therefore they don't understand being enslaved. They don't understand freedom. We're here to help them. Black people do not feel pain in the same way that we do, therefore we can do surgery without anesthesia. Black people don't understand the connection between love and family, and therefore we can sell off the father here, the daughter there. Black women are particularly sexual, and so raping them doesn't have the same meaning of a white woman being raped. This was the society, and not only were scientists and medical people reinforcing these ideas that the body is different, but the President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, wrote a treatise on the difference between the white body and the black body. It continues today. Yvonne stressed how black women aren't taken seriously with their pain. They're not taken seriously with their complaints. When they see a physician, I'm making huge generalizations here, but there are many black women who've had these experiences. It comes from this historical vestige that happened in the 17 and 1800s. Currently, we know the statistics show that black women fare worst during COVID. I'm going to give you some more homework because of time. I want you to look up Dr. Sharon Moore. Dr. Sharon Moore is an African-American woman who contracted COVID, had to fight her way into being hospitalized, had to fight her way to get antiviral medication, directed the physician staff to what she needed, and documented the discrimination she experienced in her Facebook social media. And tragically, she died of COVID-19. Check her out, Google her. And then another story that I'd like you to check out that I don't have time to go into is that of Serena Williams, one of the greatest African-American women athletes we've ever known. A wealthy woman goes into the hospital, gives birth to a healthy daughter, develops chest pain, turns to her nursing staff and says, "I'm having a pulmonary embolus. Get the doctor." Serena Williams had to advocate for her life. Any of you know pulmonary embolus is a life-threatening condition. The doctor rolls into her hospital room with a Doppler to look for DVTs in her legs, and she says, "The DVT has moved into my lungs. I need a CT scan, and I need treatment for it." You can find Serena's story in Vogue and the New York Times. Please empty the trash. Now I'm going to turn to how bias shows up instantaneously and discrimination shows up instantaneously. When I was an intern a few years ago, I would walk into a patient's room and I would be greeted with, "Good morning, nice to see you. Listen, the trash can is full. It's in the bathroom. Can you empty the trash for me?" Or I'd walk into another room and a parent would say, "Oh, glad you're here. Johnny's still hungry. Can you get him another tray of food?" This misidentification of who I was happened instantaneously. What do we call that? We call that unconscious bias. Those parents were not intentionally misidentifying me, But when I walked into the room, despite the fact of having a white coat, despite having a stethoscope around my neck, despite having a name tag that said Dr. Walton, despite wearing those ugly surgical scrubs, the assumption was never, oh, here comes the doctor. The assumption was, it must be someone from the janitorial staff or from the food service staff. That's an example of what chronic stress looks like. And Yvonne talked about chronic stress, right? That adrenaline, that fight, flight, or freeze, the cortisol surge, the chronic stress, the effect on your telomeres. One of the biggest question marks in neonatology for the longest time was, why are Black women having little babies? Why are Black women's babies dying young? Despite education, despite socioeconomic status, despite being professional women, what was the thread? What was the common thread? Today we know the common thread is racism. All of these women, poor, rich, educated, uneducated, rural, urban, the common thread is the chronic stress of racism. Good people, hidden biases. About 15 years ago, Dr. Banaji at Harvard University wrote a book, Blind Spots, The Hidden Biases of Good People. The point of this, her research and their research at the Implicit Bias Project is this, that we all have implicit bias. Each and every one of us, our brains are wired for implicit bias. If we didn't have implicit bias, we couldn't survive. In any given second, my brain just processed 30 billion bits of sensory data unconsciously. And that created a space for me to consciously be up here and talk to you about bias. We all have it, just want to reinforce that. But my point is that it is imperative that in this research, in the work that we do, if we care about decreasing health disparities across different communities, if we care about creating health equity, if we care about creating a space that's more efficacious for all of us, we have to look at our biases. One way to look at your bias is consider taking a Harvard Implicit Association test. Couple pearls on that. Number one, it's not about judgment, it's just about getting information. What are my biases around X, Y, and Z? If you're about to start a new research study and you want to work with a certain population of people, do some work around implicit bias, unknown bias in that group, that population. So, in summary, I am encouraging you to not only recognize, but to reduce your implicit biases. And in summary, our bodies are the same. I share your DNA. We're all part of the human race. I know it may sound a little trite, but it's very, very deep. Number two, we have a history that we have to explore. It doesn't feel comfortable, but it explains a lot of the issues that we're dealing with health disparities with Black women. Number three, listen to the stories of Black women. They're powerful. There's a lot of information there. It can inspire you to do, it can inspire us to do better. And then lastly, you can recognize your unconscious biases, and there are techniques to reduce them. And with that, I am complete. Yvonne? Kristen, do we have time for questions?
Yeah, we can take a few questions. Anybody?
There's one right over here.
Hi. So first of all, thank you for this excellent talk. I think it is a really important topic to consider also outside of the US. And what I was wondering about is, well, we know that both, women in general and especially women of color have been underrepresented in many, many of the clinical trials, in many of the clinical studies, tests, and so on. So what do you suggest, for instance, for groups or researchers that want to, reach out and improve this? What do you suggest where to establish a contact, where to, reach out to the reliable sources, how to actually improve this, how to move on from this point, in your opinion? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that important question. And certainly as a start is to become researching organizations where there are many organizations of Black women in various fields, and to reach out to some of these organizations and to put that question out. And I'm sure that you're going to get connected with some of those. We can also get a list out to Kristen with some of those sources to help start that.
Keeping in mind there's some barriers to the connecting that some of them I went over, the historical barriers and the current barriers. So being aware of those barriers and being prepared to say, our company, our group, we've done our research, we recognize there's a problem, we understand there's mistrust. This is what I've been doing, and this is what my team has been doing, to understand what's going on, to empathize with how you're experiencing this relationship. And this is why we want to do this research, and this is why this research will also help your community.
And that will really help open the door to the receptivity and the building of the trust that your work that you want to do is really going to be dedicated to finding out those types of things that can help improve the health of Black women.
Thank you so much for this presentation. Beyond the homework that you gave us, given the magnitude and the confoundingly ongoing nature of these issues, what is a relatively simple call to action for those of us here today that we can take with us to partner with you to address this? Thank you.
Can you repeat the question a little louder? We couldn't quite hear.
What is your best call to action to those of us in the room today to partner with you to address this, especially since it continues, as you pointed out, so confoundingly long in our history?
Well, certainly, I and Stacie, if I can speak for Stacie, we are open to collaborating with you. So just reach out, connect with us, and we'll be happy to continue that discussion and help provide some of those solutions and connections, because that's what we're here for. And thank you for that really important question.
May I add?
Yes.
That, just some personal soul searching, like what is my relationship with this topic? Whether it's Black women and health disparities, whether it's health equity, whether it's what does it mean to be in a society, what does it mean to be in a world, a global, what does it mean to be part of this global family? What is the world that we want to imagine moving forward, right? We want longevity for everyone, but do we want longevity with joy? Absolutely. How do we create communities where we can appreciate each other, honor each other's perspectives, and recognize that we'll have different opinions. I may not even like you, but I can find ways to co-create and be in an environment where we can make a better world. Sounds very philosophical, but it's something that I really believe in.
And also to commit to being a change agent in this whole arena and look at your own organizational and personal mission statements and your own core values and incorporate some of these goals and be able to, so that you can interpret them and infuse them with perspectives that can help in this mission.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.